So yeah, we're really happy to have Dustin Welch here with us tonight. He comes from a very rich musical and songwriting heritage in Nashville, Tennessee, and is here in Austin now. He's got sort of a wealth of touring and songwriting experience. He's got three solo albums out on Apple Music, Spotify, wherever you listen to your music, you can find those albums, and I definitely recommend checking them out. He founded Soldier Songs and Voices, and so we thought that he'd be a great person to sort of kick off this songwriting workshop series and kind of help us get a little bit more familiar with songwriting, gain a few more sort of tools, and just get some practice and a place to share. So, yeah, with that, I'll turn it over to Dustin to lead this. And at some point, I think April will share in the chat some of his information if you want to learn more after tonight.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm really pleased to see all y'all, and I appreciate you having me. I will tell you a little bit more about the Soldier Songs and Voices organization, just to kind of know how I kind of tie in how I started working with April on the Austin Veteran Arts Festival. And I was kind of asked to be the music director for that event last year, just because I founded this organization back in 2011, I guess it was, or 2010, uh, where we give instruments and music lessons to armed forces veterans, and we've got chapters now all over the country. And these groups, they'll meet like once a week or every other week, uh, and uh, and they're all led by professional or semi-professional songwriters, some of which will be veterans themselves. But typically, uh, it was kind of meant we usually hold these in music venues or some kind of other kind of alternative space rather than like at a VFW or a Legion Hall. Uh, just almost more for the kind of social aspect of the environment, somewhere that you that that these the folks that are participating in this, they can be able to see the stage and see where, at some point we're going to get them up to go, sing these songs that we're teaching them how to write. And at first it started just because I thought it would be just a nice, a fun thing to be able to do for some of these returning men and women. We would be able to provide them with instruments, and I just thought it would be a good kind of recreational thing to just to start uh, just introducing into a lot of these folks' lives, those who had not had any kind of musical experience. But then pretty soon we started seeing folks coming in going, I don't know what's happening, but all of a sudden I remember what I was doing last week and the day before, even, a lot of folks with brain injuries or any kind of level of PTSD. And so it became apparent that their cognitive abilities were starting to return just based off of the act of learning an instrument or writing about their initial traumatic experience, which was just kind of a byproduct. That was not really our intention at first, but once I started thinking about it, I was going, well, okay, that actually makes a lot of sense. Uh, the way that we all remember song lyrics, uh, or if a song comes on the radio that you haven't heard for 20 years, all of a sudden you still remember every bit of that song. And not only that, you remember where you were the first time you heard it. You remember what it smelled like. You remember all the different things that you know. It's kind of more of a visceral experience in the way that memory is connected with the way that we think about music. Um, I always say, of course, we all learned our ABCs to a melody, and that's why they teach it that way. Uh, I think the Torah, for instance, the entire Torah is memorized as putting it to a melody. So those things it started just becoming really fascinating to me, and I started working more and more with people that had been through any kind of traumatic experience, and what we learned about, they call it cognitive processing therapy. Writing about the initial traumatic event, you're basically able to capture that moment into this piece of writing, and then it's contained, and it's not bouncing around in your head waking you up every night. You have the power over it now. You have it in this neat little package. It's all organized in this really kind of uh, in this really kind of elegant way. It all rhymes. It all has a meter to it. It's got a melody. You can, if anytime you need it, you can pull it out and be able to sing about it. And so many of the folks that can't just sit down and talk to uh, their family or their friends or anybody about some of these, really difficult, really kind of dangerous things that they'd been through, they could put it into a song and be able to sing about it. So it's just fascinating to me, and that was all within like maybe the first 6 months we began learning about all this, and pretty soon we just started figuring out how to start other chapters throughout the country. And I, as a touring musician, everywhere I would go, I'd be talking about um, kind of the program, and eventually, at the end of the night, somebody would show up and say, "Well, how can we start one here? Like, I'm a veteran, or I know veterans here that would really benefit from this." And so it just grew and grew, and now we've been able to host the past 4 years a week-long songwriting retreat where we bring the veterans in from all the different chapters. We're able to host them for a week-long retreat and bring in a bunch of just incredible songwriters as well, instructors, uh, and uh, and we hold this down at this beautiful cattle ranch down south of Hallettsville, or Schulenburg, I guess would be the closest town. Uh, uh, and so since we can't do that this year, we're gonna hold this as a virtual retreat. So I've lined up every day. We're gonna have 3 different guest songwriting members of like some of the finest that I've known of growing up in Nashville all my life, and specifically a lot of songwriters that have worked with veterans as well. And so on our website, there's probably by next week, there will be a place where if any of y'all are veterans, or if you know of anybody that would benefit from this, there will be a link to a place where you can register for this week-long retreat. It'll be at the end of October. So far, we've got folks like Steve Earle and Gary Nicholson, Mary Gaucher, Beth Nielsen Chapman. I think all of them are multi-Grammy winners. In fact, and God, I don't have the list in front of me right now, but we've got about 15 or 20 different songwriters that'll be presenting about 3 times a day throughout that week on just through our Zoom channel. So that's going to be a really exciting thing. And in the meantime, yeah, we're still meeting every week, which has been really interesting because folks from all over the country can now tune in all together every single week, where otherwise they're all meeting within their own little groups. But now we've kind of been all figuring out how to do this virtually, and really it's been pretty remarkable. Every week somebody's got some, at least 3 or 4 people have some new song that they want to share, and they'll play it, and they are if they want some feedback, then everybody will be able to kind of go through it, pick the songs apart, and um, so just to kind of get into the nuts and bolts of songwriting, I don't know how many of y'all have experience uh, already as songwriters, uh, or or just writers in general. So I can give you sort of we can start with just sort of some of the basics, and then just I can kind of talk a little bit about the form and sort of craft of how songwriting songs can work. Uh, Although I mean, songs can do anything. There really are no rules when it comes to it. So it's a difficult thing to really talk about. But coming from, I guess, that Nashville school, I always kind of prescribe to one particular kind of format that works sort of across the board in any number of different styles. Uh, and then I also want to talk about what I always call the economy of language, uh, and usage of imagery, uh, and uh, and then I have a few kind of songwriting exercises we could try, or just song prompts, if we would like to take a minute at some point here in a little bit to just stop and just write off of one idea for 5 to 10 minutes or something. That might be something interesting. But at first, I would like to just the basics of songwriting rely on establishing a rhyme scheme, establishing a meter, something that is able to be repeated throughout the song, and something that is that can be consistent in each section of the song. So, for instance, if your verse has 4 lines, that your first verse has 4 lines, then your second verse is going to want 4 lines. It could have 3 lines, it could have 6 lines, it could have 8 lines, just all depends. Song structure, typically, you're first establishing the, I guess, what you would call the conflict, and then the second part of the song, you are supporting that idea without repeating yourself, not just like writing this, like not writing the first establishing conflict, not, instead of trying to just like say that again in different words, something that's more supportive of that just gives more depth to whatever that is. And then finally, you're looking for some kind of a resolution. And all throughout there, being able to find some kind of a chorus or a hook that can speak to those things and possibly take on new meaning throughout that form. And so if there's something that if the chorus is referring to something in the first part of the song, it may later on take on a whole new meaning, even though you're still using the same lines. You are developing that kind of depth, and all of a sudden it may take on a whole new meaning by the time you get around to it the next time. And this is, again, there we always say tools, not rules. So this is just one particular way of going about things. I like to think about, like, your opening verse as almost like the opening scene of a movie, and you're establishing where the space is, who these people are, what's going on. It's like if the curtains open and there's a table and chairs on stage, if this was a play, for instance, and two people walk out and they sit down, what are they saying now? But you want to describe everything that's going on that stage. And this gets me around to the idea of the economy of language, which it sounds a lot more complicated than it is, really. It's because in songs we only have so much to be able to get around to. We have, maybe 3.5 minutes, maybe 24 lines in the whole piece. So there's no room to be like I was saying before, repeating yourself. So I should stop, because sometimes repetition is good, and that's what the listener can pick up on. So I don't mean like just saying yeah, yeah, yeah over and over. I mean repetition as in saying that same idea, but just with different words. We don't have any time for that kind of thing. And what's more is, a lot of times, because we're performing these by singing, nobody's going to be necessarily sitting there reading those lyrics while the song is going on. They're not going to be sitting there following along with you. And so you can really only get about halfway. The listener has to come the other half, and they will be able to connect the dots in ways that you don't have to go, okay, well, first I woke up, and then and then I walked outside, and then all of a sudden the sky turned black and a tornado came through and a cow fell on me. You can just, I don't know where that came from, but you don't have to, essentially, you don't have to take them by the hand and walk them through every single step in the process. And there's a great example I use a lot of times, which was the Hemingway 6-word short story, which I think was maybe a bar bet or something. Who could write the shortest short story? So, for instance, it's a little grim, but what he wrote in 6 words said, "Baby shoes for sale, never worn." You know everything about these people right in those 6 words. You don't have to say, well, yeah, first we fell in love. We got our first home. We got pregnant. We started fixing up the baby room. We started assembling the crib, all these things, uh, and then we lost the kid, and now life will never be the same. You don't have to go through all of those little details because the listener already that they're putting those things together subconsciously, and songs, they're coming through in real time. There is no time to have to sit there and go, now I wonder what they meant by that. You know what I mean? It has to be just very much like you're connecting these dots, and uh, and it has to have some kind of a linear timeline in there. If you were gonna stop somebody on the street and say, "Hey, I need 3 minutes of your time," so first this happened and then this happened and then, oh, by the way, I forgot about this other thing. And now all of a sudden you're way over here, where you're trying to get back to this place. Like it all has to be pretty tied in together. Um, and and so I I find that a lot of times, you can go through and uh, maybe you eliminate the pronouns, uh, or if it's going to be I did this and then I did that and then I did this and then she did that. Sometimes you find yourself using too many pronouns. Uh, with that, also, just kind of as a side note, it's real easy to all of a sudden you'll be going I, and then you switch over to third person. So it's I've seen a lot of songs that people just didn't know why they weren't working, and you go, well, all of a sudden you're not in first person anymore, or you're not in present tense anymore. Now you're talking in past tense. How did that happen? So those are all things that have to stay consistent. Uh, and it seems kind of obvious, but it's real easy to do. It's real easy to just slip into those kind of things. But what I feel like it's like if you're just kind of putting pictures in people's heads. Uh, they I mean the phrase "a picture's worth 1,000 words." There's a reason for that, and uh, so imagery is really, I think, uh, one of our biggest friends when it comes to the economy of language. If you can paint a picture, if you can give an idea about uh, in the most, if you're describing the picture, if you're describing the moment, uh, rather than, I guess, it being describing, your inner feelings or something, the the listener is going to be able to identify their own feelings by this one picture that you're giving them, and in the way that you use your kind of language and your words, they'll understand your own personal and emotional connection to how that feels. And uh, so this way you're not forcing it down their throat. I think that we have so much more of a capability of empathizing with music that we, especially because of the way that melody works, and how that can uh, bring out an emotional connection with us. When that's matched up with the right kind of imagery, we 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 begin to to, as a listener, we can empathize that much closer. I mean, I don't know how many times I, I've watched another musician singing a song and have just, absolutely died laughing, or was just out of all of a sudden sobbing my eyes out, and I, for something that if you were just maybe reading it, or if it was something that you had seen, or even experienced yourself, maybe it wouldn't even have that kind of response. But because songs have that kind of effect, it's we have to be really conscious of that. And so a lot of times I think about uh, if I was the one sitting in the audience, if I'm working on a song, I'm constantly sitting there going back, going, oh, and I'll play it back to myself, and I have to kind of trick my brain and think about, okay, if I've never heard this before, and I knew nothing about this story or this song, is how would I, as a listener, be able to connect? And so you have to like reverse those roles in a way, and in a way that's different than a lot of other writing, because it is strictly an oral thing, and as I said, it's going by in real time. So if you were not already intimately aware with this song, as a listener, if I have never heard it, if I was walking down the street and I heard this, how is that gonna how would I respond to it? And is this gonna work in that way? Sometimes I'll use a trick even where if I don't know what to write, for instance, but I have some kind of I'm in some particular kind of mood or feeling, I will take myself and visualize, like, okay, where would be the if I was going to be on stage somewhere right now and I wanted to sing a song about the way that I'm feeling, where would be the the stage that I would want to be sitting on? And then I put myself in the audience and I go, okay, now what am I listening to? How does that sound? And what what are the what is the story? And sometimes, not always, and so you really got to, it's a trick of the brain, but you can sometimes it'll just come all at once, and you'll just hear the music and you'll hear the song and everything, uh, and then at that point it's just a matter of basically working backwards, and you're just kind of filling in the blanks. It's a really interesting kind of method. Um,
Hey, Dustin, I was thinking, do you want to play that song that you were going to share with the group? Just because I think it might help to for folks to kind of visualize sort of um, a lot of what you're talking about.
yeah, I this was a song I had written about a returned Vietnam War vet. In fact,
Um, yeah, April, did you get the document from Dustin that you can put up here? Okay,
might be able
sweet,
to.
thanks.
Yeah, there you go. So this song is basically what brought me to start the Soldier Songs and Voices program. But I intentionally made this thing to where, I mean, there's no place in this song where it says this is a returned Vietnam War veteran. It's just basically it's left up to the listener. I was intentionally being just vague enough I think, so that everybody in the audience could walk away with a different interpretation of this song. Now, there's a lot of songs that uh, uh, there is no there's no other interpretation. This is hit me baby one more time. She thinks my tractor's sexy. Whatever. I don't know that. These are terrible examples. A lot of songs, there's everybody in the audience, they're all going to know exactly that. Okay, that's what that song's about. But sometimes, if there's a very fine line that you can walk that is just vague enough that everybody is going to have their own interpretation of that song. Uh, so for me, that's what I was kind of attempting to do with this. And another rule I was breaking in here is the title Sparrows. That word never even shows up in the song, but that needed to be the title for other reasons that I had. Uh, let me know, but stop me if you're not hearing it well enough. But hopefully this is going to be audible enough for y'all. Weigh me down, my weary bones, lay me out to dry. Well, I won't forget the way you looked last time we said goodbye. Now nothing else makes any sense, or ever has since then. If I could, I'd do it all over again. But instead I'm stumbling down this back street, gutter of a town, and upset every sorrow I have yet to drown. Well, now everywhere I turn, expecting slander and scorn. For the life of me, I beg to be reborn. I've got to find somewhere to get out of the rain. This coat don't keep the cold out anymore. And my heart don't beat the same as it did before. I had another one of those nervous episodes last night. I dreamt about an unmarked headstone on the high hillside. Well, my backbone had been bent and broken by some ruthless climb. My mind had been caught on a rock's design. And so I turn my back and walk away and not return again. I hear the distant drums beating on the wind. Well, the branch will always break the banks of the river down. And I have a bad head, all that I can stand. I've got to find somewhere to get out of the rain. This coat don't keep the cold out anymore. And my heart don't beat the same. And my heart don't beat the same. No, my poor heart don't beat the same as it did before. So yeah, there's that. It's kind of a weird song, but uh, if I had not told you it was about a vet, there's a bunch of things that it could also apply to, and that's the thank you. That's the coolest thing is that if one thing is true over here, then it's going to be true here, and then it's going to be true here, and so uh, and that's the power of metaphor and the power of being able to uh, tap into any number of those old stories. That they say there's really only about 7 stories uh, in all of history. They've just been told different ways, and uh, so that's that. That's that song. It could be interpreted any number of different ways, but
One thing I was going to say that I think that part, like when you were talking earlier about the different kind of song forms and the Nashville style, that you have the same number of lines and a same kind of rhyming scheme and meter, and I feel like that's part of what that song that draws like the list that draws your ear in, you know. And anyway, I was just thinking that it breaks some of the rules, like you said, but I think that the song form lends itself to is what draws people into it. Just my take.
certainly, yeah, and it, it it's establishing that this is the rhyme scheme. This is how the rhyme scheme is going to be every single time, and so the listener begins to feel comfortable with that, and so they actually start to anticipate. Oh, I know what's coming next, and uh, when I was saying that thing about repetition earlier, it's like the chorus is fixing to come around. I remember this chorus from before, and now they're like placeholders throughout the song. Now, oh yeah, I'm caught up. It's given me time to process what I just heard, and and it's something I know I can anticipate. And what is actually happening is that there's a synapse in your brain that's firing right before that you hear it, because there's a beat, and now you're comfortable with this next idea, if that makes any sense. Now that's getting back into the neuroscience, and but it's the reason why we all love to sing along with songs, is because we're comfortable with this, and we think we're anticipating that coming up next, if that makes sense.
Definitely.
um, there's there's one like really fun thing that or it can be uh, when I'm because I know we don't have a whole lot of time left, but there's uh, when you're talking about the economy of language, going back to that idea, um, try at some point writing your life story in, let's say, 24 lines, or maybe less, or maybe a little bit more, but some kind of a even number, and do it to the tune of Mary Had a Little Lamb, or some kind of common melody, like find something that, yeah, da 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 da, but write your life story in those 24 lines, because there is no room to to try and all of a sudden drift off and be talking about something else going on over here. You really got to condense every single thing down, uh, and uh, or maybe it's just like you just pick all the major turning points in your life and let those be the verse, each verse. Uh, but you have to be like, what what were the biggest things that happened, where you don't have to be able to go, well, so yeah, uh, you know, I started school when I was 6 or 5 years old. Well, everybody did. So we don't need to, we already know that. You can, you can leave room for the listener to just assume and fill in the blanks themselves. I think that that's one really great exercise that that you'll find that you may actually uh, and maybe go ahead and write out, you know, 64 lines, but then just go back through and cross out all the stuff that's extraneous and see what happens then too. Um, uh, one like, you know, because a lot of times we'll give in the veteran groups, we'll give them song prompts, uh, and that's always really interesting. I had suggested, I think one week I said, well, so what's the uniform you wear now, and what does that mean? You know, is that the suit that you're putting on every morning, or you know, the coveralls, or are those uh, your tattoos and your scars? Or is that your uniform now? What are those? How's that identify with or how do you identify with yourself now in that sort of way? Um, and so that was a really interesting thing. That was specifically for kind of a group of veterans. But another one that there was a lot of really interesting stuff that happened uh, that may be worth trying. Also, I started thinking about, I think I was moving or something at the time, and I found my little kind of treasure box. We kind of like all like my keepsakes. And I was going, okay, well, uh, you know, I don't really ever take these out and look at them or spend any time with them. Some of these things are kind of hard to and emotional to take out and revisit, but I keep them with me everywhere, every time I move, you know. And so, you know, if you got a Foot Locker or something, or just, you know, I was just going, okay, well, what's in your box? What do you carry around in your box? And I thought that ended up kind of conjuring up some really interesting songs that folks took from that. Um, and it wasn't necessarily like they weren't saying, well, you know, I got this and this. They weren't giving like an inventory, but it was they were instead talking about all the things that that it reminded them of, and those moments in their life, and the most meaningful things. Uh, so you don't have to take that in a literal sense. I guess is what I mean. It's just a way to be able to discuss, like, really, like, what, and if you're holding a picture, you know, you don't have to say, I'm holding a picture of me and you know, my cousins down by the river. You just tell them about what is in that picture. You can and so you find a lot more imagery that way as well. Uh, so I don't know if any of this has been helpful, but since we only got about 10 minutes left, I wanted to say, if anybody has any questions or anything like that, or if I have not explained myself enough, uh, I would like to open things up. It looks like Amon's raising her hand.
Okay. So I just want to say, they have like, like, like they have like some music, in the, in the airport, sometimes like Sinatra. Sometimes I always listen to the, Sinatra, Fly Me to the Moon.
Mhm.
I always listen to the Sinatra music, the music that plays Sinatra. That's that is the drummer and the pianist. They play they play good music in airports.
Well, the thing that Sinatra did the best when he
Hmm.
when he came out with, you know, he wasn't writing a lot of those songs himself, but what he did so well was the way he phrased his his songs. He was just it was like he was talking to you, but there was a melody to it,
Oh,
and so
oh,
that's
okay.
and that's what a lot of times we say about songs. It's like we really you want to make them as conversational as possible. How would you just say it? And if you're going to be writing some kind of a line that you're using some word or some phrase that you wouldn't necessarily just say to somebody, then nobody's going to buy it if you're up there singing it to them either. So so a lot of
So,
times, yeah, we just talk about like you want to write the way you speak. You want this to be basically a conversation with the listener. And Sinatra was really he was one of the masters of that. Not necessarily as a songwriter, but as a performer. Absolutely. You know, we didn't even get into any kind of performance today, but especially it's all about the delivery and it's like you're trying to lay it in their lap pretty much. Like I was saying, you want that you can only get halfway. The listener has to be able to get the other half. And so in your delivery and your performance, it's really important that you're just that clear. If that makes sense.
Does anyone else have any questions, Barbara or Riley or anyone else on the call? That's all the people I can see. So,
Barbara,
oh, Barbara.
there you go. I unmuted you, Barbara.
I would just like to know if I can attend the retreat that last week in October.
Absolutely, yeah. I I think that yeah, because I think we were trying to get you there last year, right?
Yeah,
That's
fortunately
all
I
right.
couldn't.
Well, it's
I
going
was
to be
like
October.
the real thing, but oh well. This is as real as it gets.
Well, it'll happen again. I guarantee it. But this year it's going to be October 26th through the 30th, uh, and we'll have we'll have sessions going all day long, and all the information will be up on the Soldier Songs and Voices website, uh, probably by next Monday at the latest. I'm trying to get all our website stuff buttoned up. But yeah, I would absolutely encourage anybody that wants to be able to attend that. It's going to be pretty extraordinary. Yes, please.
I really love all those prompts, especially the one about telling your life story in 24 lines. That sounds like a delightful challenge. So,
It doesn't have to be
yeah,
married to a lamb, but we call that common meter. Also, it's like just something that, and usually that's going to be a nursery rhyme. But yeah, some kind of meter that that we're all real used to. Uh, uh, and so yeah, it's you're able to. Barbara, go ahead again. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was thinking more like the tempo of Once Upon a Midnight Dreary While I Pondered Weak and Weary, like a tempo kind of thing.
Yeah,
You think that basically?
yeah, that works too. Yeah, the Raven.
What's his name? Edgar Allan Poe? Poe, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, Poe. So it's a Raven. Yeah, yeah. Okay. That's all. I just wanted to just throw that in there.
I mean that's the his rhyme scheme is kind of funny in that one because it's like an B A B. It's a different kind of rhyme scheme, but those are
Yeah.
fun. I absolutely encourage that. Um, lastly, also, it, a lot of times I try and make sure that my verses and my choruses don't necessarily all have the same rhyme scheme, or maybe not the same amount of lines. Maybe, my verses are 4 lines and my chorus is 3 lines, or any way to distinguish between each section. A lot of times, it's real easy to just fall back on the same rhyme scheme for your chorus. But what we're really doing is there's a reason why this is a different section, and uh, so I think it's helpful a lot of times to either change your meter or change your rhyme scheme, going between verse and chorus, or maybe a bridge or a middle eight or whatever each one of those are going to be.
Yeah, makes
And that might, I don't know if that's going to work with the life story deal, but it's still,
yeah,
something to keep in mind.
yeah.
This is Riley. I'd like to ask you a question on collaboration. Where do you have any recommendations on, I live up in Temple, Texas, so I'm about an hour north of you from Austin there. But I'd like to find people to collaborate with that are experienced in songwriting. I mean, these things that are coming up, I'm going to definitely look into that and keep watching your website for what's going on in October and that. But are there any other platforms out there or ways for a person to find people to collaborate with? That'd be the first question. And then, are there concerns when you have some songs that, that ideas, hooks, some of your songs might be stolen as well, or used by other people when you are collaborating, especially on the internet and with a lot of people?
So I'll address the second thing first, because I have rarely ever encountered anybody trying to steal another person's song intentionally. I mean, there might be something that maybe they forgot that you were working on together, and they just went, oh, and they found it in their book, and they go, God, I don't even remember this, but I'm going to finish that. And then that's happened to me before, where I had to go back to somebody and be like, yeah, that was our song. And so, and normally they're just, yeah, or anytime that it happened with me, and it's only been maybe 2 or 3 times. Each person was just like, oh my God, I totally forgot about that. I'm so sorry. And then they go and then see it on the publishing, which again, we're making pennies and mailbox money. It really doesn't amount to having to go and copyrights and all those kind of things. It can kind of be a waste of time in certain ways. But I primarily like to co-write. That's especially growing up in Nashville, that was the part of the Nashville school. You go sit in a cubicle with somebody every day, and you go, you got anything? I don't know. You got anything? Well, there was this one thing I was fooling with the other day, and then you just and hammer it out. But what happens is that you have somebody to bounce it off of, and you can sit there and talk about, well, what would this person be doing next? What would they say? What else is going on? You have somebody, and so it makes it that much more conversational. And that was what I was talking about before, is that you know the best way to be able to reach your audience, the listener, is to make these things as conversational as possible. And so to me, it really helps to have a co-writer, because you start talking about it, and eventually somebody will say something and you go, ooh, write that. There's your line, and just write that down. And so I feel like it makes these songs more accessible because of that. If you're in Temple, I don't, I would go to like open mics, and or any kind of place where there would be certain folks that would have like a weekly residency that they're playing that would draw kind of a musician audience, and I would just kind of make connections that way and find people that were like-minded. And if you're in Temple, though, there's a fella named Abraham Ludwig. Do you know him at all? He works for the VA up there as a music therapist.
No, I don't know.
Abraham is he's a really great guy. He's the only really kind of musician that I know up in Temple. I don't know that he really goes out and performs ever, but he's pretty much strictly a music therapist working at the VA in Temple. Surely it seems like I've played somewhere in Temple in the past. I can't remember where that would have been, but I mean, when we're able to get back to everything, I'd say, find any kind of open mics, and I'm sure there's also, some online forums and ways through, stuff like Facebook where you can meet other people. And I've written songs where I was not in the same room ever with the other person writing. That has happened. It's not easy. It's not the way that I prefer to do it. Usually, I like to be able to actually sit there with them. And the other reason why I like co-writing so much is that I got to make an appointment, and so I know that from this time to this time, we're doing nothing but songwriting, and there's no other distractions going on. If I'm just left up to my own devices, it's hard to stay on task otherwise. But yeah, I think that I would definitely encourage looking for other kind of collaborators.
Thank you.
Well, you guys got anything else? Anything you're interested in?
I'm not sure. I think, Susan, I think we're at the near the end here. I was going to say that the next time that we're going to do our next installment of the songwriting workshop series is going to be October 7th, Wednesday, first Wednesday of October, and we are still in the process of getting our next presenter, but it's likely going to be Galen Lee, who is the winner of the Tiny Desk contest a few years back and is active in the disability rights movement. So very different style of music, but we're looking forward to her hearing some of her insights about it. So thanks so much, Dustin, for coming here and sharing sort of some of your tools, not rules, for songwriting. I think it's pretty helpful and great prompts as well. So maybe we'll send those out maybe in a follow-up email or something so that people can try those.
Yeah, and if there's any kind of follow-up, anything, I can be reached through the SoldierSongsAndVoices.com website or through the Dustin Welch website. Also, there's contact emails. So, by all means, just if you got any kind of anything at any time, I'm happy to jump in there. So, I could talk about this for hours. So thanks for letting me rattle on and on, y'all.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Okay. Good night, everybody. Thanks, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you to our ArtSpark Texas funders, Texas Commission on the Arts, National Endowment for the Arts, Creative Forces, St. David's Foundation, Cultural Arts, City of Austin Economic Development, and Reeve Foundation Quality of Life Program.